Good evening, everybody. Welcome to
Good
our,
evening.
oh, good evening. Usually people don't respond back. This is very cool. I'm going to
Hi.
go ahead and mute everybody. And I do appreciate you saying hello back. So let me go ahead and make sure we can mute everybody.
That's the loudest.
All right. All right. So now everybody's muted, and I really appreciate you coming. Hopefully you opened up the last emails that I sent to you regarding our guest speaker, Kathryn Kellogg. I gave you links to her YouTube channel and to her blog and all the amazing things that she's done. And I know wrapping up our year of being in quarantine and COVID and us talking to all these different people from around the country, this is a great way. This is a great way to, I guess, continue more of what we've done. And Kathryn's going to wrap up everything that we've learned and talk more about going zero waste. And she'll explain that to everybody. Now, she's in Berkeley, California. So it's about 5 o'clock her time. And she started going zero waste in 2014, and her website's been up since 2015. So I don't want to tell anything more about her, but she is infectious. She is positive. She reminds me, I look at her and I see a little bit of me getting so excited about what we've learned over the last year. So it's good to have somebody like-minded and even go beyond, and you guys are going to be blown away with all the information that you're going to learn tonight. So thank you, Kathryn, for coming.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you so much for having me. So hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here this evening to get to chat with you all about sustainable living. So I've got a presentation that's going to run for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we're going to have a Q&A afterwards. Tammy, if you could make me the co-host, that would be fantastic. Great. Thank you. It's so exciting since so many people are here from all over North America. That's so exciting. Canada, right? We've got Canada, Florida, Maryland, I think you're saying. So that's so exciting. It's great that we have such a diverse group. I'm really excited to be speaking with you. So this is my presentation. And we're going to be talking about zero waste living. So when it comes to sustainable living, there are so many different ways to approach it. The way that I just happened to approach it was through the lens of zero waste. And so I think it's really important that we kind of define what zero waste living is and what that means. So the technical, simple definition is to send nothing to a landfill. The more complex definition that I personally really like is to completely write waste out of existence. I personally find that if we're only looking at what we throw away, and if we're only looking at our trash can, we're missing a much larger and bigger picture. Because waste doesn't only happen when we throw something away. It can happen at stages all throughout the production. And it can also happen in tons of other ways, right? We can have a waste of time. Time is our most valuable non-renewable resource that we have. And that's also something that's precious. That's not something that should be wasted either. We can have a waste of money, a waste of energy, a waste of resources. And I think that so many of our problems tie back to waste. And if we can just cut out the waste and focus on what we truly need, there'll be enough to go around for everyone. So the true goal is to move from a linear economy to a circular one. We currently live in a linear economy where we take resources out of the ground, we turn them into products, and at the end of their useful life, we dump them into a giant hole in the ground where they will live forever. It doesn't really make much sense when you think about it. And instead, with the circular economy, our goal is to take resources from the earth, turn them into products, and then find ways to reuse them over and over again. And I think that makes a lot more sense. And if you have any questions as I'm speaking throughout my presentation, feel free to pop them in the chat or just save them for the end of the Q&A. So we've got a few problems. We run into a few problems when we think about a linear economy. And the biggest one is that it assumes there's an infinite supply of resources. And we know there's not. In fact, there's a calendar on the day called Earth Overshoot Day, where we mark when we've sustainably consumed all of the resources the Earth can produce. In 2019, we hit it on July 31st. We're essentially using 2 years worth of resources. Now in 2020, and if you remember the beginning of 2020 in March and April, when things were really closed down, there really wasn't much travel happening. A lot of people were staying home. There wasn't a lot going on. A lot of industry was halted. Even then, with all of those measures that were put in place for a few weeks, we hit it on August 6th. We bought ourselves a week. 1 week. And I think it's really eye-opening to think about how we need to shift, how we need to rethink our economy, and so we can create something where everyone can thrive and where our resources are properly valued so we can create an equitable future for everyone. So let's talk about why this is happening. Well, one of the main reasons is acceleration for more profit. So you might have heard of planned obsolescence. You might even have found yourself saying, things just aren't made like they used to be. I don't know if anyone has said that when you've been using an appliance or something else. And that is absolutely true. Things are not made like they used to be. It's because we're using much cheaper materials. We are often not necessarily using the best construction of those materials. And with technology, we're even installing into our devices things that will make the device run slower and less efficient to encourage you to consume and buy more and more. This is called planned obsolescence, and a lot of companies are very guilty of this. One company in particular, who has been taken to court over installing software to slow your technology devices down, also created special screws, created brand new screws. And the only people with the screwdrivers were their own personal technicians to force you to have to go to their stores to get it repaired. Companies also make things incredibly difficult to repair, things like Keurigs and toasters. Now it's more expensive to repair your toaster or your Keurig machine than it is to buy a new one. And this is all by design, planned obsolescence. And the goal is just to keep you in the consumer cycle. And so one of the ways we can break that is repairing when possible and also demanding for legislation change. And I want to say there is hope. There are several countries right now that are looking towards ending planned obsolescence, and there was a bill that was just passed in France. What this also does is it devalues our resources. There are so many things we do in our day-to-day lives that have no monetary value. Therefore, they are seen as not having any worth, but we know that's not true at all. And I think a really good example of this is when you buy a plot of land. Let's say you have a bunch of trees that you're going to clear cut for paper products. You take all the trees out, then the next time it rains, now instead of trees with roots that hold the soil together, it's going to cause erosion, it's going to cause mudslides, it's going to create ecological impacts and physical tangible impacts in the communities and the people who live around there. But that wasn't really factored into the cost of cutting down the trees. So we just also have to learn how to think of things differently in order to make sure that our resources have the appropriate and proper value when we think of how to change the system. And when it comes to our personal lives, we've really lost connection with a lot of our trash and a lot of our waste. Many of us put our bins out on the curb, or maybe we take our trash to the dumpster, then someone comes and picks it up and they just take it away. But where is away? Where is it going? And what's happening to it? So living a low waste lifestyle is thinking more about the full life cycle of the product. Where did it come from? What happens when it's with me? And then where is it going? I also think it's really strange that humans are the only creatures in the world that create trash. If you think about it, giraffes, squirrels, donkeys, all the other creatures, no one else creates trash. It's just humans. And that is one of the main goals, is to live more in harmony with nature and use the ultimate architect as a blueprint for design when it comes to creating our products. When you think of a tree, when it drops an acorn, that's not trash, right? That's going to turn into a nutrient-rich soil, a compost to nourish the tree. It's going to feed a squirrel. It can grow a new tree and create new life. Everything has purpose and design and intention. And that is something I think is beautiful and would be a really nice way to live. Can you imagine if every product you bought and consumed, every piece of it had purpose, intention, and a way for it to be reused and reclaimed back into the system? And this is what living a zero waste lifestyle is all about. It's about living with the patterns of nature, and it's about ensuring that we're going to be able to use everything with intention, design, and purpose. The first time we heard the term zero waste, it was used as an industrial term. In the 1970s, a guy named Paul Palmer in Oakland, California, right near where I am, he invented a company that took chemicals from companies who did not want the chemicals, and then he sold them to companies who did want the chemicals, essentially reducing waste and ensuring that one product was not wasted and giving it to someone else who needed it. And I just think that's a really fun fact, because zero waste often harps so much on perfection and so much on it being a lifestyle choice. But the fact is, it was used as a business term, and you can actually get your business zero waste certified or closed loop certified. And but in order to get those certifications, what it means is you've created an 80 to 90% diversion from landfill. And I think an 80 to 90% diversion is very possible in most homes for most people. And as I've been talking about reclaiming, reusing, and designing with intention, you might be thinking, this sounds an awful lot like recycling. And I heard you guys had a fantastic presentation on recycling. So I'm not going to go too deep into it, but I will also be touching on that as well. One of the most famous slogans that I'm sure you've heard is reduce, reuse, recycle. And why is it that whenever we think about sustainable living, the first thing we think about is recycling, when instead there are two other words that are so often skipped over? And that's because recycling is highly marketable. If I were a company and if I wanted to sell you a product, do you think I would get a good result for telling you to reduce, therefore to not buy my product? Probably not. There's really only one ad in the history of ads I know of that has done this, and that's Patagonia's ad, "Do not buy this jacket." Now, if I were a company and I wanted to sell you something, do you think I could use reusing? Potentially. I mean, there are quite a few companies who have lifetime warranties on their products, who make products that are meant to last, that are really well made, but that's still few and far between. Now, if my product were recyclable, then I could get you to consume a lot more. The University of Texas did a study where they set up a party and they had a table, a drink table full of cups, and they put a trash can next to the table. And when they had a trash can next to the table, people would reuse their cup over and over again. But if they put a recycling bin next to the table, people would get a new cup every single time, because the thought of recycling and it being so good for the planet overrides the fact that reducing and reusing is often much better than relying on recycling. Our recycling system is currently in turmoil, and I think a lot of that has to do with perception. A lot of people see recycling as such a good, almost charitable thing, but recycling is a business, and it depends on markets, and it depends on people being willing to buy those recyclables to use them in their products. So I always think this is a really fun challenge. Next time you go to a recycling bin, I want you to take a good hard look at it, just like see what's in the bin. Maybe it's your bin at home, and think, would someone pay me for my recycling? And it's pretty eye-opening, because when you start thinking about people actually paying for your recycling, you start making sure it's clean and trying to make sure it's not contaminated. So contamination happens in a few ways, but one of the main ways is putting in incorrect items or putting in dirty items that aren't clean. So I'm going to run through a few of the most common recycled items, which is aluminum and steel, paper, glass, and plastic. So when it comes to aluminum and steel, we actually have a really robust system here in the United States. On average, like a tin of beans, can go from your curbside bin back on the shelf in 90 days. It's a really nice closed loop system. You just want to make sure that there's no leftover food residue. And you also want to make sure that you're not adding any excess liquid. So tap some excess liquid out of your cans, add a little bit of water into the tin, swish it around, make sure it's clean and it's dry. And you can recycle aluminum foil, but it just needs to be clean with no food residue stuck to it. And you never want to put anything smaller than a Post-it note in your recycling bin. When it comes to paper, paper should also be clean and dry. So you don't want any food stuck onto the paper. Paper towels and paper napkins, those are not recyclable, but they are compostable. I know that you guys also had a fantastic presentation on composting. And paper can be balled up, brown paper, cardboard, all of that is fine, but not shredded paper. That's going to be smaller than a Post-it note. All of those strings can easily get caught in the machines at the materials recycling facility. So make sure that shredded paper is fantastic for composting, but don't put it loose in your curbside bin. And then glass. Glass is really interesting because it is 100% recyclable without any loss of quality, but it's very energy intensive. And a lot of recycling locations have stopped recycling glass in the US. What I find really fascinating about this is most of the sand that's used to create this glass, we're running out of it. We don't have much of it left. So recycling glass is really important. And I'm very surprised that we don't have more locations that are actually handling the recycling of the glass. There was actually a great startup in Tulane in New Orleans from Tulane University, that's where it was started, where students started a glass recycling program to create new sand and to use it to bolster the ocean or like the local coastal community. It was absolutely fantastic. So I highly recommend looking into that if you're interested. But a lot of glass is used for landfill cover. So the way landfills are set up, they have barriers, but none of these barriers are really permanent. So a lot of these barriers, things can leach through them, can get into the groundwater, can get into our waterways, because we have all this stuff. And then every day at the landfill, they kind of bulldoze over it to compact it down, and they put landfill cover over it so oxygen can't get in. And that's why often sometimes you hear about landfills igniting and catching on fire. That's why they try and keep oxygen out of the landfill. And glass, a lot of glass, instead of being recycled, is actually used for landfill cover. So one of the best things you can do when it comes to glass is just to reuse your glasses. I have so many glasses that I use for food storage, for holding all sorts of knickknacks and items, things like hairpins and hair ties, and making sure that I'm reusing my jars and giving them a second life. And then we get to plastic. Now I save plastic for last because plastic is pretty interesting. One of the main problems with plastic is that it's not really recyclable. Now, we've made a lot of really good advances in technology for recycling plastic. Plastics 1 and 2 have a pretty robust system here in the US, but 3 through 7, it's kind of a mixed bag. And so when you see plastic, the recycle sign, it doesn't mean anything. So when you see the chasing arrows, it's not about seeing the sign, it's about the number inside of the sign. So plastics are numbered 1 through 7, and you need to pay attention to the number. So plastic films, things like plastic bags or just thin films, those are not going to be recyclable in your curbside bin. But the rigid plastics 1 and 2 are pretty safe. 3 through 7 currently don't really have a very good market here. And plastic never really goes away. So Orb Media did a study in 2018, and they found that there was plastic in 84% of drinking water worldwide. And a study done by the University of Sydney in 2019 found that we eat a credit card's worth of plastic every week, which adds up to a clothing hanger a month. We are eating 12 clothing hangers worth of plastic a year. That's a lot of plastic, especially because plastic is toxic. So I'm sure many people are familiar with BPA, right? We see it everywhere, BPA-free plastic. What they don't tell you is that a lot of BPA was replaced with BPS, and BPS is more endocrine disrupting than BPA. So plastic is an endocrine disruptor, which means it interferes with our hormones and our body's communication systems, and it's been linked to a lot of health problems. And if you're interested in learning more about that, one of the best books I can recommend is called Estrogeneration. And it talks a lot about these synthetic estrogens or xenoestrogens and how they present in our bodies and how they affect us. And that's actually why I started reducing waste in my life. Is I had a really bad hormonal imbalance, and I was reducing my exposure to synthetic estrogens. And one of the first things I did was I switched to natural cleaning products, making my own cleaning products, because cleaning companies aren't legally required to disclose the ingredients in their products. And a lot of them contain synthetic estrogens as well. I started eating a more plant-based diet. I started swapping out my products from disposable ones to reusable ones because it saved so much money. And lastly, I also started greening my beauty routines and my skincare products. So I majored in musical theater and was a professional actor, and toured doing musical theater around the US and had a fantastic time doing it. But you don't make a ton of money as an actor. And I actually met my husband at an acting gig, and we moved out to California together. And it kind of all clicked for me when I got here that so many of the changes I was making for my personal health or out of financial necessity weren't only better for me and my wallet, but also better for the planet. So it was the first time I really heard about zero waste living. And I thought it was a really beautiful way to live because it is designed with so much intention and designed to cut out the excess and really focus on the things that matter most and how much joy that can bring to your life. Now, at the time when it came to zero waste living, the most popular thing to do was to store your trash in a mason jar. So for 2 years, I cut my trash as much as possible, and this was 2 years worth of trash. However, this is not a requirement for going zero waste, and I did stop shortly afterwards because I didn't think it enforced the best message. So instead, I personally like to look towards how businesses get certified with an 80 to 90% diversion, because I think that's possible for so many people. Now, I'm from Arkansas, and it's not exactly the most sustainable state in the US. I actually didn't even really learn about recycling until I was in college, and didn't really get involved in this until around 2009 and 2010. So I just think it goes to show like how much awareness has come about really recently, and also how it's never too late to get involved and to be interested or passionate about anything. And I just think that's also really, really beautiful and nice. So a few of the overarching themes we have with zero waste living, because it ties into so many movements that are happening right now, the more natural living movement, minimalism, and I think it all does go back to the core of reduce, reuse, and then lastly, the very, 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 very end, then we recycle. But I think one of the best things is to simply find contentment. Marketers are so good at preying on our desires and our wants and our needs, and making us feel like if we only had X product, then we would be happy or loved and have friends and all of these things. And so much of it is self-conscious. It's attacking your subconscious, it's attacking your subconscious to make you self-conscious. And by learning to love what you have and finding commitment and confidence is one of the best ways you can really bolster yourself against those messages. And so many studies have been done to find that people who value experiences over things are just happier. So instead of collecting stuff and focusing on bettering our belongings, instead it's about focusing on what truly matters. And I know that COVID, for me especially, I feel like has really put that into perspective. I haven't seen my mom in almost 2 years and I miss her a lot. And I'm actually so excited because next week I get to finally go home and see her now that I'm vaccinated. And I think that these are the memories that I want to have with me for a really long time. And I don't think any of us at the end of our lives are going to wish that we had bought more stuff, but instead we're going to wish that we had focused on the people and the people that really make life important. And so underneath still that reduce heading, buying less is actually one of the most eco-friendly things you can do, which I think is so easy and such a budget-friendly way to be eco-friendly is to just buy fewer things and fewer items. And so I like to ask myself a bunch of questions when it comes to buying something. I also like to put a 30-day buy ban. So anytime I see something I want, because I'm very susceptible to marketing. I am every marketer's dream. They show me a picture, I'm like, yes, I want it. And then I say, no, okay, that doesn't make any sense. Wait 30 days. And if you still want it in 30 days, then you can have it, but you have to wait. And what I found is when it comes to waiting, I realized that I have something that's really similar, or I can borrow something from a friend to use for the afternoon, or maybe I just don't even really need it or want it. And this ensures that whatever comes into my life is something that I love and I'm going to cherish and I'm going to keep and use and be happy to have for a very, very long time. One of the things I love is how the sharing economy is becoming so much more prominent. I find that community has very much been eroded in many parts of the United States. But with the sharing economy, I'm hoping that we'll be able to bring more communities together where we can share our resources. So instead of me buying camping gear, my neighbors buying camping gear, and their neighbors buying camping gear, and everyone owning camping gear that you only use for 1 week out of the whole year, you can just rent your camping gear. And we're using fewer resources because we have fewer products. And so places like REI and any other sort of outdoor store where you can rent your camping gear is fantastic because we can share these resources. Libraries where you can share movies and books. And in Berkeley, there's a tool library where, so if you're doing a big project, redoing your floors, you can go and rent the saws and all of the equipment you need and then just check it back in. There's toy libraries. You can rent clothing now for special occasions. And it's great to see how we're going to be able to share resources and hopefully use fewer resources to create those products. But of course, we do need to buy things, right? So when it does come to buying things, we want to make sure they're made well. Who made it? Are these items made to last? Is it meant to be repaired? Is there a warranty on the item? So if it breaks or if something happens, we can make sure it's taken care of. And what happens when you're done with it? Is it something that you can pass on? Is it something you can keep? Is it something that's going to have resale value? That's something that I ask myself a lot is, does this have resale value? One of the reasons I love shopping vintage, especially when it comes to clothing, is the resale value is high. And I know that with vintage clothing, these pieces are made so much better than almost anything you can buy at the mall now. Like, not only have they stood the test of time of 50 to 70 years, but they're probably going to last a lot longer. And I can even resell it at probably the same cost that I bought it. So it's also like really thinking about smart purchases and how we can ensure that what we have is going to continue to retain value. And as we start to shift consumer culture, businesses do start to follow. And that's been also something that's been very interesting since I've been doing this for about 8 years. So, and then of course, buying secondhand is also a great way to ensure that you're using fewer resources because you're taking something that is already currently in the waste stream and you don't need any new resources. So here's the part of my talk that is action items. So we've kind of discussed and laid the framework, we're laid the foundation, the framework, and these are the action items that I hope you will be able to implement into your lives if you'd like to. So here are the big four. These are like the big four areas of our lives that we can create a really big impact. So we have transportation, our homes, our food, and trash, which we've spoken quite a bit about trash throughout the presentation. So food, animal agriculture is one of the top 5 most polluting industries in the world. And as we also look at global food systems and globalized food systems and where all of the food miles is coming from to get food to our plate, it's just really interesting because we do typically eat 3 meals a day. So this is a really great place to have a bigger impact. And one of the best things is to eat fewer animal products and maybe try meatless Mondays and try switching up, maybe trying some new vegetarian recipes is always fun and adding those to your plate. I think the only thing that pretty much all nutritionists can agree on is that people in the US can definitely eat more plants and more produce. The average American diet, which is actually called the Standard American Diet, and the acronym is SAD, which I think is a little humorous, consists of almost 3/4 a pound of meat a day. So it's mostly meat, wheat, white potatoes, and cheese. And so just by adding in some more greens, not only are you going to be feeling a lot better, a lot healthier, it's also better for the planet. When we come to housing, compact housing, of course, is a fantastic way to reduce our emissions and personal carbon footprints, as well as looking at efficiency and renewables. So I live in an apartment. I cannot put solar panels on my house, but there are so many great things that are happening with community solar projects. Places like Arcadia, Clean Choice. These are fantastic businesses that work with existing energy providers to supply and ensure that your energy that you're using is coming from community solar. And then of course, efficiency. So efficiency is great because that's going to save so much money on your bills, things like windows, insulation, and light bulbs. Switching out the light bulbs in my apartment, have moved often. My dad was in the military, my husband was in the military, so I moved a lot. And one of the best things to do is just to switch out the light bulbs. Anytime we move, we have we always install our LED light bulbs and a water saving shower head. These are just like really simple swaps that have saved a lot of money on our bills, and they just happen to be better for the planet too. And then transportation. I haven't really gone anywhere this past year. And I'm sure many people have not traveled a ton either. And I know I'm very excited about going home to Arkansas to see my mom. But I think one of the really important things is when it does come time to travel, that we're traveling really meaningfully. So instead of a bunch of smaller trips, doing larger trips that are more meaningful just to reduce the amount of time that we're traveling. And then trash and recycling, which we mostly have already covered. And so now we're into the top 8. So these are 8 more action items. And I will also share my presentation with Tammy too, if she would like to send this out afterwards, if anyone wants to keep the list as like a checklist. So number 1, buy less, which we had a whole slide on. And number 2 is to use real stuff. So a lot of people think, and similarly to paper towels, a lot of people think that using disposable items saves water. And on the surface, it makes sense because you aren't washing them in your home. But what that leaves out and neglects is the water footprint. Every single item has a water footprint. It's called virtual water that's used to create the item. So a paper plate, for instance, it takes 8 gallons of water to make a paper plate. It takes 3 liters of water to make a 1 liter of plastic, like a 1 liter plastic bottled water. It takes 37 gallons of water to make 1 roll of toilet paper. So when we start looking at how much water goes into the creation of each product, choosing a reusable item is going to be so much more eco-friendly in the long run because of the resource consumption. So instead of using paper plates, use real plates and real forks and real knives. And if you wash them in a dishwasher, if you have a dishwasher, it only, on average, modern dishwashers only take 3 to 5 gallons to wash an entire load. So for the water cost of one paper plate, you can wash a load and a half. So just by opting for that, that's just a really great way to be a little more eco-friendly. Number 4 is using a reusable water bottle. I always have my reusable water bottle with me. It's just so easy to take. Before I leave the house, I kind of run through a little checklist, which is my phone, my wallet, my water, my keys, and now my mask. So the 5 things I make sure I have before I leave my house. Number 5 is eating more whole foods, more plant-based foods, focusing more on produce, beans, whole grains, things like that. Number 6 is compost, which I know that you guys had a whole presentation on composting. Composting is fantastic. So landfills, like we were talking a little bit earlier about the composition of landfills and then how they're not aerated. And because they're not aerated, organic matter can't break down and it can't decompose. So instead it's releasing methane, and methane on average is 30 times more powerful than your average greenhouse gas. And 16% of all methane emissions in the United States come from landfills. And what I mean by more powerful is that it stays in the atmosphere longer and it has more warming capabilities. So in other words, it's a little faster acting, a little harsher, or a little more powerful than carbon is, at least when it comes to creating warming gases. So composting is fantastic and it's one of the best things you can do. I'm a huge fan of compost. And according to the EPA, 50% of the average American household can cut their waste just by composting, because 50% is organic matter. So it's a simple swap and you can cut your trash by 50%, like that. Number 7 is DIY cleaning products. So this is something that these are so easy to make. They're so inexpensive. And one of my favorites is, I actually have it right here. I was cleaning my office earlier. So it is, you basically have a spray bottle like this. You can just fill it up half with water, half with vinegar, and you can use that to clean almost your entire home. It's effective, inexpensive, and just great for general cleaning. And then number 8 is the monthly practice of writing legislators. So this is something that I have been in the habit in. I actually served my local government for 3 years, and it was fantastic getting to learn more about policy and legislation, because individual action is amazing. And I really like to end my talk on this, because while individual action is great, we also need to make sure businesses and our policy is backing it up. To ensure that all of it is going to be happening and it's going to be equitable. Because if sustainable living rests solely on a few people who are doing it perfectly, that's just not very sustainable. And we need to make it easier for everyone to participate, so that way we can make true, meaningful, and lasting change. So thank you so much for having me. My website is goingzerowaste.com. I also have a book, 101 Ways to Go Zero Waste. And if you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer them.
Right, everybody, if you'd like to unmute yourself now. I know I always have tons of questions. So while you are all thinking about it, Mrs. Greenberger, and everybody else, if I've watched a lot of her YouTube videos, and one of the things that I saw Kathryn do is she takes to-go containers and her own container, like to the bulk parts of stores, and gets her nuts, and she doesn't buy anything that's sliced or that comes in extra containers. And so that was one of her things, is that she doesn't buy anything that's already sliced, and then she'll bring her containers to the salad bar and things like that. So I was just wondering, how does that work? I know she said during COVID, unfortunately, you don't do that, but how does that work, and how does that benefit? In our stores open to seeing people bring in their own containers at a salad bar or in the bulk item?
Absolutely. So pre-COVID, I would bring in, sometimes like glass jars. You could even bring in plastic jars or cloth bags, and I would get my own products to go in my own bags. And now what I'm seeing a lot of those since COVID has closed down a lot of these bulk stores is there's a lot of innovation that's happening where the package will be provided to you on a deposit based system, and then you will take it home, use it, and then you can bring it back. So stores like Loop, which is actually it's dropped off at your doorstep. You order your groceries online, they drop all of it off, and then you use it, and then you just set them back out on your porch. Then UPS will come pick it up, and then they'll send it back to Loop and sanitize it and refill it. So similarly to like glass Coke bottles, which were very popular up until the 70s, then just how it's a whole refill system, or the milkman model. And we're seeing a lot of this happen because I do think it needs to be easier for customers, right? It needs to be easier than me having to remember to bring it. So how can we make it easier on everyone so more people will hopefully participate? And even Starbucks is trialing a reusable cup program and a deposit system. And we're seeing so much of this. So I'm really, really hopeful that we're going to be seeing a lot more of it very soon.
All right, Mrs. Greenberger,
Yeah.
yay.
I did not understand when you were showing the mason jars filled with your paper. Uh,
Right.
what happened to it after it was in the jar? I mean, you said it didn't work or something, but
I actually still have the trash jar. It's just kind of like a museum piece. It's just kind of like a piece of art now. I still
I
have it
did.
on the shelf.
What was the purpose of it? I mean, you
How
just
did you keep
accumulated
track?
jars of trash?
No, no, this is what she ended up using after 1 year. This was all the trash that she had, like, actually that she couldn't recycle, or that's all it was one jar of trash for an entire year that she wasted, I guess you could say. It's amazing.
Yeah, so that was that. Yes, that what was in that jar was a display of all the trash I had created over the course of the year. So it was just kind of like how much I had reduced. I had reduced to the point that it was just like a really small thing. And the point of collecting it and keeping it was because it was a trend at the time, and mostly it was used for a media gimmick, so to speak. So I don't know if anyone here has seen Gypsy, the musical, one of my favorite musicals. And the song "Gotta Get a Gimmick." That's kind of like the zero waste gimmick, was keeping your trash in a jar.
Wasn't there like a contest to see? I think there's you and another woman that's been going zero waste too. So Mrs. Greenberger, so after she recycles and buying products, this was all the trash that she had fit in a mason jar. So that's what that was all
Terrific.
about.
Terrific.
Can you repeat the Loop information?
Of course.
Is that just the what is it? Loop what?
Is it only in California, or would we have it here in Florida, or we'd have to research it?
It is Canada, and it is all of North America. And I will drop the link in the chat box. It's called Loop Store. They're also partnered with Walgreens and Target as drops. And I'm dropping that in the chat right now. There you go.
Thank you. That actually goes along with something that I've been wanting to ask someone, and I never know who to ask. So I think it's a little off track, but not really. What drives me crazy is the fact that I have these perfect boxes that come to my door and they're getting recycled. Why does Amazon not just pick them back up and reuse them? It drives me crazy. And all these companies that are delivering all the time. Now it's my fault that I'm buying them, so I'm doing damage. But I have just these beautiful boxes that are not being reused. They're being recycled, and it just seems so silly.
I completely agree with you 100%. And I think one of the best things to do is to write the company. So next time you get one, write the company, tell them you want to see reusable packaging, because there is more of this coming about. There's a few places that are creating reusable boxes. I actually just got my first reusable box, and it has like a QR code that I scan and drop it back off at a drop point. And I think that's really neat. I hope we'll be seeing more of that. And Also, if you have a friend that has a small business, I have a few, I save a lot of my nice boxes for them so they can reuse them in their stores, and places like, if you're on Facebook, like a Buy Nothing group, or Buy Nothing groups are fantastic, by the way. If, I don't know, community wise, you guys have one, it's great.
Yes.
Yes, they're so nice. Also just like listing boxes, especially if people are moving, you know, just listing those for free, and sometimes people can come pick them up and reuse them. But I agree with you. It's a problem that absolutely needs to be solved.
Yeah, Amazon needs to lead the way because they're doing most of the damage.
You can also put the boxes, you can break the box down and put it in your garden or your compost pile, which if you lay it across your garden, it's a weed blocker.
Yep.
And it just decomposes and adds back to the earth.
Yep, I've done that before. I've even donated mine to a community garden, my boxes, especially when I'm a part of the junior league. And that's what we do. We volunteer, we take all the cardboard and we lay it down on the community garden, and we put mulch over it, and that keeps it from weeding. And we are always running out of cardboard boxes. So I've actually done that and collected cardboard boxes from some of the clubs I used to work with. So that is thank you for bringing that up, Alyssa.
Tammy, I want to bring up something. We brought up at another one of these kind of
Can you
lectures.
yell a little, can you speak a little louder?
Yeah, we had another, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so we had a lecture like this some time ago. And I have found that Florida is very weak on recycling, although the lecturer tried to tell us that it didn't matter even if you threw your cardboard or plastic or glass or anything in the garbage, literally in the dumpster, it would get recycled. Now, I just am curious if that is truly the fact, because we do have recycling bins for plastic, obviously glass, and paper and cardboard. But I don't want to call whoever that lecturer was not telling the truth, but is it honestly the case? Because if I go to the dumpster and I see tons of cardboard boxes people just toss in there, whether it's an Amazon box or a cardboard box that an appliance came in, whatever, it really disturbs me to see that. But he swore whoever he
It was a
was,
sheet.
that this stuff Florida was very good about taking stuff from a dumpster, whether it be garbage, like food garbage, that kind of stuff, and recycling it again. Can you please confirm that is actually true?
So Kathryn, this was what I was telling you about, that Florida has two facilities that they have the highest in the country, that they do that high burning. So what they're able to do is, they said, it when in doubt, throw it out. And what they do is they put it into like an incinerator, where then that goes into the material that's like, it goes to the ash. And then that's where they go ahead and they sell it to the power companies, or, it reduces our landfill. So are you familiar with that? And Mr. Zimmerman, if she's not, I can go ahead and get people that can confirm what she talked about.
So I'm assuming in Florida, your waste management, or your waste hauler is Waste Management. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So based on the Waste Management, so I actually am a spokesperson for Waste Management, and I worked with them for 3 years in a row. I'm a huge fan of Waste Management. This is my understanding based on the facilities of theirs I have toured. Well, I've not toured yours specifically. There is a single stream waste that they do use, which is, I believe, the waste to energy. And this is called single stream, where there's only one bin and people put all of their stuff in one bin, and then it's supposed to be separated. The contamination rate on the single stream is so incredibly high, though, that most of that is not reclaimed for recycling. So I'm assuming it is going to the waste to energy plant, Tammy, like what you were talking about, where they're converting it into energy. So definitely, if you are capable of using the separate bin. The separate bin is always going to result in a cleaner stream. And when you have a cleaner stream, it means that you're going to be able to sell that product and be able to recycle that product in a much more efficient way. So I would definitely say aim for ensuring that the items are separate, but waste to energy, there's two waste to energy plants. The other one is in Nevada, I think. And it's really interesting. I'm personally not a huge fan of waste to energy because of the like off-gassing and pollution and what happens when our trash is actually burned. But it is an interesting idea. And I know Waste Management also has methane capture, or has started using methane capture on a lot of their landfills and uses it to power their garbage trucks. And now that is very cool.
That is
Kathryn,
cool.
I have a question. You said ditch paper towels. Okay, what's the alternative? What do you suggest after you ditch them? What do you do?
Well, like I said, I was cleaning my office earlier today, so I've got my rag right here, and I use cloth towels. So just old school cloth towels, and I've got, cloth napkins. And I have not bought paper towels in almost 10 years. I have not bought a pack of paper towels for anything. It's great. I save so much money. It's fantastic. And how I do it is I just use them, and then if they're like especially like dirty or wet, after I clean, if it's really dirty, I'll just rinse it out. And so it's damp, and then I'll just lay it over the sink until it's dry. And then I'll just throw it in my hamper. And that was when I didn't have a washing machine, in my home, but now I have a washing machine in my apartment, and I just throw them, once they're dry, I just throw them into the base of the washing machine. So the next time I wash a load of clothes, actually, I don't do the laundry, my husband does. So the next time my husband does a load of clothes, they're automatically washed. And it's, so that way they're just always in cycle. It's great.
Thank you.
Kathryn, I don't mean to be indelicate, but you mentioned the amount of water that went into making a roll of toilet paper. Are you suggesting we not use toilet paper?
Well, I will say when there was the great toilet paper shortage of 2020, I wasn't overly worried because I have a bidet attachment, and I am a huge fan. Like I have converted my whole family to bidets. I mean, we also use toilet paper, but you just use a lot less, and it's a lot cleaner, and they're fantastic. I'm a huge fan.
Okay.
Yes.
And
same here.
Kathryn,
they're very
Kathryn,
yes.
I saw a film at the Murakami Museum, a Japanese museum, and this was the subject. They showed a woman coming out of her apartment house with carrying garbage, and she went to the dumpster as we do down here, but they had about a dozen different containers. She was so busy picking out piece by piece, going from, now they evidently are far ahead of us.
Yeah, I think they have one of the best recycling rates in the world. It's like 97%. But I'm assuming being on an island, there you don't have quite the luxury of space that we do here in the United States. They have to be very careful about product and resource consumption and reuse.
Sure. You're not too good. You're not too good for the economy. I didn't buy anything or shop for any clothes in a year and a half. And finally, I went to store. I was concerned about them. I wanted to make sure that we keep the economy going. So I bought at 5 different stores, but I will not buy again because on PBS, that a young teenager that's in the forefront of just this subject that you're speaking on, if you're familiar with her, she's a leader in the product and waste products. Have you watched that? And she stressed clothes. She says, we actually buy too much clothes. And that's a big problem in the waste.
Yeah, so when we talk about the economy, it's really, really interesting because we've outsourced so many things that we buy, or like so much of our stuff is outsourced. And if we are actually to transition to more jobs in the United States with higher quality and higher price points, because it was made locally and with like sustainable materials, the economy would be working just fine. It just has to do with the restructuring. And I think it's actually, it would be fantastic to be supporting more local makers and local artisans rather than global corporate billionaires, and instead supporting our people in our own community, and how we can create thriving communities for everyone to thrive rather than just a select, very, very, very few billionaires who control so much of what our purchases are.
Heidi,
Did
you
you
had a
mention
question?
Iceland?
Oh, wait a minute, Mrs. Fay, I have Heidi Kaplan has a question. Hang on.
I was going to say, it annoys me to see on TV an ad for paper towels. I think it's Bounty, and he's telling you rather than use a rag, take your paper towel and wet it, and you can wipe all your refrigerator, your stove, your dishwasher, your counters, and then you just have to throw it away. What kind of advertising is that?
Not environmentally progressive.
I think we need to do more in this state, personally. I mean, in Connecticut, they've gone to charging for for plastic bags. When you go to a supermarket, you have to almost fight with the cashier to not put your thing in a paper bag. And when I see people, or a plastic bag, I'm sorry. And when you see people who walk out with a quart of half gallon of milk, and they have to put it in a plastic bag, I don't care if the bag is free or whatever. People should just become more aware of these things, and I don't understand why people
The cashiers don't even
and the
get it.
cashiers are I swear, the cashiers, you have to fight them off. You don't even ask, paper or plastic. They just put it in something, and people don't need to have that. And at least in Connecticut, and again, I'm not trying to advocate for Connecticut here, but I'm just saying, if you start to charge people, maybe they start thinking about it. If you charge,
you need to charge for them.
You would be amazed at how many people are walking out of our supermarkets without any kind of paper or plastic.
Overnight, everybody started remembering their canvas bags.
They brought a bag, or they would leave, or they left without putting it in a bag altogether. Why do you need to put something that's already in a container in another container?
You're
They
right.
do that with clothes.
On Long Island, we started recycling about 1.5 years ago, and they charged you $0.05 a bag, and people grumbled, but now nobody even thinks about it. They bring in their reusable bags, and they're used. You keep them in your car, and we did that in Florida because we were so used to doing it.
Same here.
I think a big part of the problem is education that has to start in elementary school. And if children are brought up to be environmentally
conscious. Absolutely.
Then they come home and they see their parents doing something and they say, no, this is wrong. And if you bring up the generations this way, you will see a change.
Well, we only can hope so, but you know how many years this has been happening? This is nothing new. Dee and I lived in Manhattan. I hate to tell you how many years ago. And there was a time when they were taking recycling you could go to a place that would give so much per pound for newspaper, plastic, and glass. And needless to say, aluminum, was the least. You would get like 10 cents a pound. There's a lot of aluminum to make up a pound. But the point is, it put it into your mind that this is what we should be doing. And when you go back to Earth Day, again, 100 years ago, it all was an education, which is a shame that people just don't get it today. They still don't get it. That's my point. They don't get it now. I'm sorry.
I mentioned it to Publix about charging, and they said the customers wouldn't be happy with it.
Well,
so how do you fight that?
Then that's too bad for the customer.
It's a governmental thing that has to be done. It cannot be done by a store.
That's right. Absolutely.
I agree.
So who's gonna volunteer to write that letter, huh? Right?
Kathy didn't mention about recycling styrofoam, which Publix does take if they have a bin for styrofoam. And how many people are recycling that?
That's a
I
good-
do. You know, egg
How many-
cartons and so forth.
How
Where do
many
you
of you take back your plastic bags that from your produce to reuse? Even though
I
you,
don't use them. I have a cloth one.
for produce, they weigh it in a something
It's
other
a
than a
very
plastic
light,
bag?
it's a very light bag, which has a string and you to close it. And they weigh that. It weighs very little, almost like your plastic bag. You don't need the plastic bag in the store.
Where do
There
you
you
get
go.
those?
See, Kathryn, look, we have somebody right now that is, that's doing, that's wonderful.
Actually, it was somebody in a store that gave it to me when I was shopping and just putting it in the cart. She came up with a bag of 3 of them and she said, use this instead. And they're cloth bags, very lightweight.
I have to find those.
Excuse me again, but can you please, somebody brought up a great question. Where do we go to recycle styrofoam? Or is that something that you can also throw in the dumpster? And
Well, Publix takes
Publix takes-
styrofoam.
Oh, okay. That's right.
They do.
We used to
Kathryn,
bring.
do you know much about what styrofoam is, what the special recycling for styrofoam or where that might go
Yeah,
from?
Publix has a bin just for styrofoam.
No, I know, like
egg
where does the
cartons or
styrofoam
those-
go? Like it's special recycling, but I was asking Kathryn, like what does it do next? Does it just get thrown
I
into a
have
landfill?
no idea, but who do I ask?
I'm asking Kathryn, our expert here.
Ask-
Oh, okay.
So there isn't a very large market for recycled styrofoam, and I'm assuming if it's at Publix, probably a lot of it is very contaminated with food, so that's going to be a huge issue. But one of the only items that is used, so styrofoam is polystyrene, it's plastic number 6, and yeah, most commonly is styrofoam. And what they use it for is they use it for crown molding. And the creation of like crown molding is often used as plastic number 6. But that is really the only end product that actually uses styrofoam in its creation. So there's not a very large market for it currently.
Well, there's no market, but where can we be, aside from Publix, is there a way that we can start the recycle styrofoam?
I will, we can look into that and we'll ask, we can always ask our legislature. We can, we can contact our waste management. I think there is places that waste management had those bins, especially like where you take your, like your paint and your glass. I think there's a whole recycling center that the waste management have that's right up the road from us on Jog, I believe it is, or not Jog, it's the next one.
441.
Yeah. So we can look into that. Now, Kathryn, do you guys have special recycling facilities in California?
Well, we have we just have our bins that we put outside, but we don't.
But you don't like have a place that you would take your chemicals, your paint, your big products?
We do.
Yes. So just our local like waste facility. So like Recology is our local waste management company, and they have like drop days where you can just drop off things like old paint, also like your batteries, like small electronics, e-waste, things like that you would drop off that you wouldn't put inside of your single stream.
Kathryn, do you know?
On 441.
Yeah. All right. Mrs. Greenberger has a question.
Yes, I'm curious about these reusable produce bags. Are you familiar with those, Kathryn, and where can you get them?
Yeah, of course. 1 second.
I'm gonna drop it in the chat. Yes, you should see the video that she has there's a YouTube channel that shows how she goes shopping, and we can look that up too.
Yeah, these are the super lightweight ones. Earth Hero is a really nice shop. But of course you can also, if you type in produce bags, there's all sorts Flip and Tumble makes really good ones. Flip and Tumble are some of the best ones. Flip and Tumble produce bags. Here we go.
All right, do y'all,
Flip
can you
and
know how to figure that out, everybody? In the, what I'll do is I'll click on the links too. I'll copy them and I'll put them onto my notepad. And then this way, when I send out the link to the recording, I'll go ahead and send the links that she sent. So before we end this, I'll go ahead and copy all of these links. I hope. All right, so that'll be all right for everybody. So anyways, we have come to our, I guess, our end of our lecture. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. And
Very
then,
nice.
Thank you very
Very
much.
much.
yeah,
Thank you.
Thank you
Tammy,
Thank you.
very
Thank you.
informative.
Aw,
Very,
thank you so
well
much.
done.
I hope you all,
Very, very good.
Catherine.
Thank you,
Mostly
Catherine.
enjoyed.
Thank you so much.
bye, thank you.
Thank
Right,
you.
thank you, Catherine.
Thank
Yes.
everybody.
All right, so I think, yeah, she's going to dinner and we're all gonna go get our ice cream right now.
Tammy, before we go, Tammy, is this the end of our lecture series?
Oh my gosh, no, you guys have not seen anything yet. I've just put together for June and July, where it's called summer camp. I have every single Thursday and Tuesday, I have lectures. So we're coming up with our Gleneagles University, but we're turning it into like a summer camp school where I have a lecture series, a film camp, all based on certain films. We have one about Hitchcock's Lesson in Love. We're gonna have, they're gonna talk about single set films, you know, from the, you know, the Coen brothers. He's gonna talk about the Coen brothers. We're gonna have Nikki Sepsas have a travel abroad where he's gonna take us to different countries without you don't need your passport. And he'll talk about getting back to cruising, you know, the cruise lines. So we're gonna have that. We'll have our book club. And on Tuesdays, I'm gonna be doing Tech Tuesdays. And I'll be talking, I think we're going to talk about Gmail, how to tricks and trade of using Gmail. We'll talk about the iPhone basics, Android, talk about kitchen gadgets. So this whole summer, I'm just going to try different things. You know, over the summer, we did a lot of environmental, but so now we're going to do it a little more educational or more like, you know, I think what the members have asked for, which would be film and travel, things like that. So that is what I have planned for the summertime. So if you have a topic that you want me to find people to talk about a series, let me know. So that's what I have in store for everybody for June and July.
Hey,
Perfect.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Tammy, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Tammy.
thank you,
I
Kathy.
got out of control about
I
it.
appreciate you all and I miss you and just as I'm getting to know you all, you guys are going back home. So
We'll still be on Zoom.
We'll be on here and we'll be back here soon. Take
all
care.
right. Now I don't have any bingo or trivia planned over the summer. But yeah, if I get my faithful 15, that's it, right?
That's right.
My faithful 15, I can throw up a bingo game anytime. So alrighty. So
Good night.
All right.
Good night, everybody.
have a great night, okay?
Everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank